Welcome, everybody. It's another week of Breakfast All Day. We're all back. Matt, Christy, Alonso. It's been a very eventful week. Movie theaters are opening. We finally got to see a movie together and, touch each other, which we haven't done in 14 months. Above the waist.
With consent. It was consensual touching.
Absolutely. But, it's like these.
Look, we're all married.
We've been
to other people, not to each other.
Exactly. This is not a big love situation. We've been Zooming for over a year now. So it was very exciting to have that in the flesh moment, and then watch a movie with two seats between us, because that's what we had to do.
Yes. Things I learned that day. Alonso is a fierce hugger.
I will realign fierce, hold you tight, hold you a long time. I hadn't quite realized that.
I knew that.
I'm not complaining.
He has grabbed me and lifted me up off the ground. And I heard cracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my lead, Alonso. That was my lead of our news items, is that we all got to actually see each other. And that was, at least for me, that was my first press screening in over a year.
Yeah.
I know others have seen other things, as we were just discussing before we began, but that was our first press screening. We went and saw A Quiet Place Part 2 at the Century City Mall, and we had to wear masks inside. And even though it's a theater with the big leather recliner seats, they still required us to have two seats between each of us. And it was strange. And we could talk about this next week when we review the film, but it was a trip seeing it in that setting versus seeing the original A Quiet Place, where it was packed. It was a giant packed auditorium at the ArcLight, and you could hear a pin drop. And so it was a really strange experience to not have that kind of buzzed communal energy.
Well, I for some reason missed the A Quiet Place press screening, so I bought a ticket and saw it in a regular theater that was packed, and again, silence. And it's that's miraculous. I think that's the power of these movies, is that because we have arrived in an era where it's really hard to get people to not look at their phones and not mutter to their neighbors and stuff. And the silence that those movies achieve is really something. And so, it would have been nicer to test that hypothesis with a full theater. But I'd say even, as at 25% capacity, you could feel we were all holding our breath.
Yes. Josh Welsh, who runs Film Independent, asked me in response to our Instagram post, was there popcorn? No, there was not. It was a quiet place. We were not allowed to eat. The concessions were not open. They sometimes, they used to, in the before times, sometimes give us free popcorn and soda beforehand. And that did not happen. So our masks were on the whole time.
So question, is Century City open to the public yet? Or was it just that they opened it for us to do our thing?
Well, AMC theaters are open.
Well, I ask because 4 hours later, I drove out to Burbank to see F9 at the AMC Burbank 15, and it was open for business. There were other people there seeing other movies, and the concession stand was open.
Yeah, I saw at that Burbank AMC 2 weeks ago, The Conjuring, the new one, and that was open that evening. And there were, in fact, there was a radio promo screening because they had people lined up with I know, right? Which, it was crazy. So
I was slipping Twizzlers under my mask, basically.
Yeah, when we went to that screening together, it was also an interesting exercise in who can you recognize when you only see half their face.
Leonard Maltin still looks like Leonard Maltin.
Yes, as does Jesse.
Yes, they are unmistakable. Yeah, it was a treat, though, to see so many of our old friends and actually have hugs. It was nice to have physical contact with people besides my husband and my son. So that is sort of our big news of the week. But also happening in Burbank, I think it was Burbank, the Ricky Schroder accosting a Costco employee. They said it was somewhere in Los Angeles, and just from the look of the layout of the video, it looked like it was a Burbank Costco. I don't know if you guys know, but right when you walk in, there's the optometry stand. Anyway.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think it was a Burbank Costco, but yeah, he videotaped himself hassling a manager at the front door of Costco because he didn't want to have to wear a mask. And he was like, Costco says you don't need to wear a mask anymore. But of course, state and local edicts supersede that. And so,
was he saying Costco said that? Did he say Costco said that, or the FDA said that? I forget.
Costco,
the company,
has said corporate Costco that
Okay.
you don't have to wear a mask at their stores anymore. But of course, that's with the caveat that local rules
Sure.
take precedent. And so
course.
he shows up in his Blue Lives Matter hat and videotaping himself, what a big man, hassling this Costco employee, and urged all Americans to denounce Costco and cancel their memberships, and then
Okay.
later on apologized.
Costco pays their employees more than a lot of other comparable, like Walmart, a lot of other comparable retail outlets do, but nobody gets paid enough to have to deal with fucking Ricky Schroder in your face with a camera yelling at you about mask rules that you were only there to enforce, that you didn't create.
Like, when's it going to end that people who are working hard and like have been putting themselves in harm's way, like grocery store employees, like Walmart and Costco employees, like when's it going to happen that they're not going to have to deal with shitheads like this? Like, when will that day come? Because it keeps happening,
There was I don't know if y'all saw the video that this guy posted online. It was a comedy thing. It was like, nobody wants to work anymore. And one of the lines was, we called you frontline workers heroes, but that was just pandering.
Yeah, could somebody make I can't wait for the terrible, 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 terrible movie with Ricky Schroder and Kirk Cameron.
And Scott Baio.
Dean Cain, Christy Swanson. There's a whole, with James Woods and John Voight. Actually, I think Ricky Schroder had early exposure to John Voight in The Champ, and maybe that's the problem.
Oh, that's a really good point. So when I was in the 6th grade, I was the president of the Ricky Schroder fan club at my school. And we all went and saw a taping of Silver Spoons and got like autographed pictures and got to meet him. It was very exciting. I look back now at horror, my childhood. One of my first crushes, Ricky Schroder. I think I thought Scott Baio was cute back then too.
I know there's some of the crushes of yore are letting down the culture. Actually, it's interesting because if you look at this whole incident, you've got Ricky Schroder being a right-wing asshole, so that's the John Voight element, but he's also yelling at someone in public, and that's the Faye Dunaway element. So there's a lot of The Champ happening here.
Made me snarf my tea. That's really
funny.
Like
the chump.
So, but good things are happening. We talked about, we're back to the movies again. Other things are opening. Lollapalooza is going to happen this summer.
Those still happen? I didn't even know. Wow.
Yes. The 90s are back, baby. High-waisted mom jeans and Lollapalooza and the Friends reunion.
Yeah.
The Friends reunion is next week.
Really quick, to be clear, because there are pictures, we all got together. We are not together this particular day because I was having a sore throat yesterday, and although I'm feeling better, in an abundance of caution, we decided we would Zoom again today, lest the breakthrough virus, and we all.
We are planning to be in each other's spaces very soon,
but not next week either.
Live from Irv's Burgers.
Next week, Alonso has cheeseburgers to eat at this time of day.
Actually, we could do it here because we had to make a reservation to get into the Irv's pop-up, and so mine not going till like 2:30, so we could swing it.
Okay. I have no reservations about going to Irv's.
Do they do like turkey burgers or veggie burgers?
Well, back when there was an actual Irv's, they did, but I think for this one, they're doing just like burgers, fries, like Stella Artois, and like it's a very limited menu. But the reservations all went like that because people loved Irv's and people loved Sonia, who ran the place, and her family. And West Hollywood is, even before the pandemic, like the Irv's location, which remains empty, and all these other businesses on Santa Monica Boulevard, we're on a total distraction here, are like have for lease signs because like unscrupulous landlords would rather hold out for like some national chain to come in than allow for the kind of mom and pop stores that make a neighborhood the way that like Irv's was one of those kind of places. And so like I live in a ghost town of empty storefronts that no one can afford to rent. And so having this Irv's pop up for a day is just a reminder of like this great thing that we once had.
Oh, well, I hope it's delicious. I hope it's everything you wanted it to be.
I'm very excited.
Yes. So Lollapalooza is happening July 29th through August 1st in Chicago. They're saying they're going to do it at full capacity. I mean, it is an outdoor thing. Among the bands are the Foo Fighters, Post Malone, Miley Cyrus, Megan Thee Stallion, and Journey.
Oh, without Steve Perry?
Does he not sing with Journey anymore?
I don't think he does. I think there's like Steve Perry, and then there's like State Fair Journey. I think that's my last.
Like the Beach Boys aren't really the Beach Boys.
Exactly.
It's the same kind of thing.
It's Mike Love and three dudes named Ed.
Why are there only 4 Duran Duran people now?
If you can't answer that question, I don't know.
They just dropped a new song though. You guys heard it?
Their first album in like many, many years. Hooray. The Getty Museum is opening, or did open this past week.
Oh, okay.
The Arrow Theater is reopening on June 10th, and they're doing some retrospective 70 millimeter stuff, things like The Master.
Yeah.
Maybe
2001, I think.
2001, I was going to say. Yeah, some good.
Probably
good
Lawrence
stuff.
of Arabia. That's when they always do. And the American Cinematheque has also taken over the Los Feliz 3, and they're going to be doing programming there at least while the renovation of the Egyptian is going on, and maybe even after that.
Yes. The Beach Life Festival, which is sort of like a mini Lollapalooza down here in Redondo Beach. They are doing their thing September 10th through 12th. Our friends Silver Sun Pickups are playing, as well as Jane's Addiction, Cage the Elephant, Fits and the Tantrums, Men at Work, Portugal the Man and the Wallflowers. So the little mini Lollapalooza down here at the beach.
Fits and the Tantrums that'd be a fun show.
Yes, the revival.
Their cover of Sweet Dreams still is amazing. If you've never
like the Eurythmics Sweet Dreams, or like
yeah. It's like one of their Eurythmics. Like that was one of their first tracks that I think people started to be aware of before Hand Clap and everything else. But that's a great track.
Christy, did you see the new Beverly posted a schedule for June?
No, what's on it of note?
Well, a lot of what you would expect, like there's a week of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There is a double feature that I'm excited about, which is Paris is Burning and Party Girl.
That's like tailor-made for you.
Totally.
I love Party Girl. That's a great movie.
It is a great, yeah, for sure. They're doing another double feature of Hedwig and Velvet Goldmine, which is pretty groovy. They're bringing back their Grindhouse Kung Fu stuff. Cinema parody, so Great Escape, Bullet and the Getaway, Tenet in 35 millimeter, Female Trouble in Desperate Living, New York, Dracula's Daughter and the Hunger, Caged Heat and Caged Women, Kung Fu's Hero and the Young Dragon. So, the usual kind of mix of stuff you get at the New Beverly.
Good stuff coming back to the New Beverly. This makes me hopeful, though, that it's not just the big chains, but like the smaller theaters that we all love going to around here.
Really quick, speaking of the Hunger, I saw some news that there's a remake potentially in the works.
Angela Robinson, who we love, is doing a series, I think. I forget who the writer's going to be, but yeah, that's a thing that got announced this week.
Did you guys see this piece that our fellow critic Scott Tobias wrote about Shrek?
Did he write the original piece that everybody's complaining? I just, it's that thing in Twitter where you see the third reference, but I didn't follow it all the way back to the source. So what's his deal? Instead
of doing like it's the 20th anniversary of this movie, let's look back at it with fondness. He looked back at Shrek and he said it was a piece of shit, basically.
I've always thought so.
Yeah. I mean, I think in its day, was the animation not considered kind of groundbreaking?
Yes, but in the service of, that script. Yes, for sure. It definitely was. But I think it also it introduced the whole let's pack this movie with a bunch of celebrity voices thing, which I think has been maybe done more harm than good in the long run for animation.
And pop songs, right?
That too, yes.
Yeah, but you could argue, I would argue that Aladdin is the one that really started that off with Robin Williams. And then you started having star power coming into these animated films where you previously didn't really have that.
Yes, and I think you could make a case that that's a thing where for a character like the genie, you want somebody like Robin Williams to get in there and do his thing. I don't know. I mean, what's wacky is that of course, obviously these movies when they play in non-English speaking territories are generally dubbed with that country's movie stars. So it's just I don't know. I didn't love Shrek when it came out. I thought it was kind of. I thought a lot of the humor that was meant to be sort of family friendly was kind of smutty, which is fine, but not in a kids movie. I actually like the sequel better. I think the second Shrek and the Puss in Boots movie, but the first Shrek I'm not a fan of.
It's just funny because when you write something like that, it gets people so angry. And I don't know whether it's like they really truly love Shrek and they're angry that you're attacking it, or it's a piece of nostalgia for them and they have fond memories of that time in their life and you're attacking their childhood or their youthful happiness.
Well, it's that thing of, is it great or were you 8? Like, and I think that applies to a lot of movies. And I think that the discourse should be able to support the idea that maybe someone doesn't like Shrek, and maybe someone thinks that the success of Shrek led to some things in the world of animation that were not great. And if you disagree with that, then disagree with it. Write your own article, like, complain about it on Twitter, but don't be like, how dare you defame the world, the name of Shrek?
It's okay to not like Shrek.
Yes.
One of my clearest memories of Shrek was people complaining about the Ang Lee Hulk movie and that the CGI Hulk in that like Shrek.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty true. And then also, did you guys see the Sinead O'Connor interview in the New York Times?
No.
Yes. Talking about what her life has been like since she tore up a picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live, and how actually when everyone said she was destroying her career with that, that she has never been happier. Like, she feels like that was liberating to her, and the kind of success that she enjoyed because of many songs, but especially Nothing Compares to You, put her into the box of being the kind of pop star she never wanted to be.
Right.
And that's not who she was, and that's not who she is. And so now she lives in like a little cottage on a mountaintop in a little village, and she smokes her cigarettes and she watches TV, and she has a bunch of lovely friends that she never would have had otherwise. And she has this like happy, quiet life. And she still shaves her head every several days. But she never wanted to be the pretty, sweet pop star. And that was actually like the best path you could possibly go down to experience what we would consider like a meltdown or a failure or whatever.
I remember very distinctly when her first couple songs broke, and there was an interview with her or an article that talked about she shaved her head specifically to get away from the beautiful pop star thing before that album even dropped. And every once in a while you might see some picture of her like posing as modeling with full hair, and it's like, oh man, she could have totally owned that like starlet gorgeous thing, but that's not what she wanted to do, and she's remained true to that.
Yeah, the interviews that I've seen with her along the way kind of suggest that, so I'm glad that she's at peace with all of this. But I mean, yeah, I think it was always clear that she was not interested in playing that. And she was right about the Catholic Church. Like, I think we have to acknowledge now that like that organization is steeped in like corruption and the sexual abuse of young people, and she got in early on that one and paid a price for it for talking about it publicly. But you look back on it now, it's like, she wasn't wrong.
She was right. She was also doing the thing that so many artists and especially so many musicians have done for decades, which is like use their platform to bring attention to subjects.
Truth to power,
right. I mean, like what were all the folk singers singing about in the 60s and the 70s? She also talks about, this is also partly about her memoir. This is part of the reason for this article.
Oh, cool.
She talks about Prince terrorizing her. She says, Prince summoned her to his macabre Hollywood mansion, chastised her for swearing in interviews, harangued his butler to serve her soup, though she repeatedly refused it, and sweetly suggested a pillow fight, only to thump her with something hard he'd slipped into his pillowcase. When she escaped on foot in the middle of the night, she writes, he stalked her with his car, leapt out, and chased her around the highway. Interesting. And so she talks about the fact that, he wrote the song that is her best known song. And she views it as, that's my song. That's not his song.
Well, I mean, when we think about Manic Monday, do we think about Prince or do we think of the Bangles? Yes, songwriters obviously play a key role, but the ones that make it land in the public imagination very often are the people who have the hit with it.
Anyway, that's in the New York Times.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, there's the new trailer that just came out for Respect. And part of that trailer shows what looks like what the trailer would have you believe is Aretha and her singers writing that song.
Respect.
Which Otis Redding wrote and performed first. Now they rearranged it, but there's a little bit of me that's like, how are you guys going to actually be true to the way that went down? Let's see.
I mean, singers interpret. I mean, Aretha. If you look at her, sure, no, I know. I'm just saying, like you look at her version of "I Say a Little Prayer," for instance, which was, the official sort of Burt Bacharach, endorsed version was the Dionne Warwick, and then she took it and Aretha it, and he now acknowledges, well, we should have gotten her to do it.
Right, and absolutely, Otis Redding would later say, "Oh yeah, that was my song. It's hers now." Absolutely, he would later say that hers was the definitive version. Right. I'm just like a little bit of it's like
biopics are not known for they're getting it right when it comes to crediting people for things. Yes, for sure.
Hence the fun of Walk Hard. Dear Evan Hansen, did you guys see the trailer this week for the Dear Evan Hansen movie?
I'm trying to go back to my not watching trailers stance unless we have to start doing it again for this show. So I have not seen it now.
But did you follow people tooling on it? Because Ben Platt is 27 years old, playing a high school student. So I never saw Dear Evan Hansen. I didn't know what it was about. I thought it was like a gay teen romance, but actually it's about a guy who pretends to help somebody who's committed suicide or something. Anyway.
Yeah, people love this musical. I've never seen it either, but I've seen on Twitter where people will just describe the plot in a way that just makes it sound like, what the
what it sounds like to me is the serious musical version of Greatest American Dad.
Yeah. The World's Greatest Dad. World's Greatest Dad.
Sorry.
Funny. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Sorry, I didn't mean American Dad.
Right. In song. And you have Julianne Moore and Amy Adams, both women in the window.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, and it's, look, Women in the Window, talk about people too old to play teenagers playing teenagers. That guy who plays the son across the street. He's in
episode 4 of
Underground Railroad, which we'll be talking about. Or is it
5? Is it 5? It's 4.
Which we'll be talking. Yeah, we'll be talking about that on our Patreon.
Taught us nothing. It's that you can have 30-year-olds playing teenagers.
And Stockard Channing was 34 years old.
That's what Ben Platt said. Look at Grease.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just had to review Blast Beat for Roger Ebert, and both the guys are supposed to be in high school, and they are both in their mid-20s, and they look it. So again, when I was 6 or 7 years old watching Grease, I didn't care that Stockard Channing was 34 years old, singing about how worried she was to be teenage and pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, this is a movie obviously that has a lot of marks against it now, but when 16 Candles opened in 1984, one of the reasons that it felt like a genuine jolt to people who were teenagers at that time was that the cast were actual teenagers, and we had just gotten used to seeing Porky's and all these movies where late 20-somethings or 30-somethings were playing high school students, and it was like, oh, that's what we look like. It's a thing that movies don't do as often as they could have.
Yes. Demi Lovato says they are non-binary and their pronouns are they and them.
Good on them.
Yes. Demi has had a journey. They have gone through a lot, pardon me. And so this is, I think, very helpful to anybody else who is trying to understand their identity. That is a big deal. Billy Porter said in a big Hollywood Reporter interview that he has been HIV positive for 14 years. Do you see that?
I did.
Okay. He says, I'm the healthiest I've been in my entire life, he says.
Yeah, it is a very manageable thing now. I know a lot of people who have been positive for a long time, and I can never remember the cocktail, whatever it's called, that
protease inhibitors.
Protease inhibitors. Thank you. That was not coming to my mind for some reason. Has extended a lot of people's lives and transformed what was a death sentence for a while into something that people can, manage as part of their overall health.
Yes. Lady Gaga did a big interview with Oprah as part of this new series called The Me You Can't See. It's the series that Oprah produced with Prince Harry.
Oh, okay.
And Lady Gaga is the subject of the first interview and talks about how when she was 19, she was raped by a record producer and how she suffered an understandable breakdown after that and thought that that was, just what was going to have to happen in order to become successful in this industry. And she has spoken in the past several years about being a sexual assault survivor, but she says she will never name this person, like never wants to deal with him again. But she was very candid about that.
You look at what Kesha had to go through. I'm sure it's just like, you have to decide what your priority is moving forward. But yeah, I'm sure that stuff runs rampant, and I hope more people talk about it, and I hope that it becomes a thing that it's like in all the industries where the Me Too movement has been happening in and out of the entertainment industry. Like, it's got to stop.
Yeah, and it helps, I think, greatly to have someone of the stature of Lady Gaga to be so frank about it.
Sure.
There's a movie that Alonso, you sent me this, that a bunch of filmmakers worked on together, sort of an anthology.
Yeah,
it's coming out, and it's like Apichat Pong, Wersethakal, and David Lowery, Jafar Panahi, Laura Poitras, and that is coming out through Neon at some point this year. And it's just an interesting way to see, really creative people try to find creative ways to still get work done despite the challenges of production because of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's also Domingo Sotomayor, Anthony Chen, and who did Anthony Chen directed Wet Season. Yeah, I think it's going to be because I think we have an eye right now when we're watching stuff that we know was produced in the last year, where you're like looking at like in Pose, you can tell the balls are a lot less crowded than they were in previous seasons. It's like as far as the audience goes. So like I think often we have an eye to like, how do they try to cheat it? How do they try to fake it? And so it'll be interesting to see stuff that is explicitly made during that period about that. I mean, we've already seen a few things like Host and Lockdown, but I'll be curious to see what creatives came up with during all this time.
Yes. NBC says that these next seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine and This Is Us will be their last. I've never seen a single episode of either of these shows.
I saw the pilot of This Is Us, but and it's a good pilot, but that's been it.
I think Brooklyn Nine-Nine is fun.
People love that show. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's super fun.
NBC also announced that their next live musical is going to be Annie.
Oh, really?
Yes, which could be awesome or terrible. I don't know.
Who's playing Annie? Who's playing Miss Hannigan?
I don't know that they've announced that yet.
When I was in the 4th grade, we did Annie. I was Duffy. I was one of the orphans. My mom made the orphan costumes out of burlap sacks with like pieces of Velcro to attach them together.
Well, I someday you'll have to do the Hard Knock Life choreography for me.
I can sing and push a broom at the same time. So that's that. And then a couple of sad deaths this week. Paul Mooney died of a heart attack at age 79.
Yes.
Matt, we were talking about him beforehand.
Yeah. Paul Mooney, a lot of people don't realize, is kind of responsible for the Richard Pryor that became the legend that was Richard Pryor. Because up until he started working with Mooney, Pryor was, kind of doing the Cosby thing, like, kind of, easy, relatable, kind of like, certainly not the foul-mouthed and like taking racial issues head on thing that he was doing. For anyone that watched the Chappelle show, those sections with Mooney were great. Chappelle would talk about how you didn't give Mooney notes, you just let him do his, like, Chappelle's, I learned really early on, you don't give Mooney notes. Absolutely. Dude just would just drop bombs and speak his truth and didn't give a shit whether you cared or not.
He also nurtured the career of one of my favorite performers, Sandra Bernhard. When she was an up-and-coming stand-up, he was like one of her sort of main mentors. And he played Sam Cooke in the Buddy Holly story.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he had a really rich career.
Also, Charles Grodin.
Yes.
A treasure, like always good in everything, and could do so much with so little, with just like a withering glance or a sigh, or just like the deadest of deadpan deliveries, and
For
was
sure.
like consistently the most hilarious person every time.
Yeah, and it's an interesting generational thing because, like, I grew up in the '70s, so like my thought of his TV appearances and the kind of movies that he did are far afield from, like, Beethoven, Clifford, and the Great Muppet Caper, which I think is for, like, that's been more the sort of millennial connection with him. But yeah, he was great. Wrote a really funny memoir called "It Would Be So Nice If You Weren't Here," and yeah, just one of those guys who you could plug into something. And Midnight Run, he's great, but also like just his bits in Dave and in like Albert Brooks's Real Life, and just an extraordinary career.
His SNL appearance is jaw dropping. Like, go back, because the whole time he's kind of riffing on, like, you guys are amazing. Like, he's stepping back and almost like breaking the fourth wall consistently, and like, oh, that's how you guys do this. That's really cool. Yeah, and there's an earlier part of his career where he's less acerbic than I think we would see in his talk show later. Like his talk show, when he would tell people, like, no one cares what you're doing next. Right. Like, but
I
yeah,
think the talk show was a bit of a miscalculation, but though it had its moments for sure.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit ahead of its time. Cause I think he was one of those guys that was willing to, outside of some of the stuff he did in the movies, like mess with the media machine. Right.
Sure.
And you do that now and everyone's like, oh yeah, cool. And I don't think at that time, like in the 80s and even early 90s, people were quite ready for that. And to this day, Midnight Run still is one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's a shame that Martin Brest has not been able to do anything since Geely. Although who knows, maybe we'll get that back.
True. If Bennifer can be back, anything is possible.
Right.
I also have fond memories of Seems Like Old Times. Right.
Yeah.
That's also all of our youth.
Yeah.
That movie was on the summer my mom went to rehab and I went and stayed with my cousins. That movie was on like every single day on like whatever the earliest incarnation of HBO was. And I watched it like every day. So I had really fond memories. There's just like a grounded kind of wisdom and sweetness to his presence. But then he could also like twist that ever so slightly. And it was kind of biting and kind of mean, but also hilarious and also kind of adorable. It's a great balance he found there.
Can you make chicken pepperoni?
I cannot. So anyway, so that's very sad. That was this week. Also, we have some shows that are beginning this week. Nick is very excited because M.O.D.O.K starts today. Is that your M.O.D.O.K? Oh, perfect timing. Matt has his M.O.D.O.K tiki mug.
That's why I brought him out.
That's perfect. And the new season of Camp Cretaceous, the Jurassic Park animated spinoff, begins today. And I think the new episode of The Bad Batch. Have either of you guys watched M.O.D.O.K yet?
Not yet, but it keeps popping up in my Hulu menu. I'm like, okay, yes, M.O.D.O.K, I'll get to you.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. I want to. I've been watching The Bad Batch, which I like. For those people that don't know M.O.D.O.K, he is one of the most egregious examples of Jack Kirby's out there art. Like he's this scientist that makes himself a super genius and ends up with just a giant head on a little body. And the character design is just batshit. And M.O.D.O.K stands for mobile organism or mental organism designed only for killing.
And he's voiced by Patton Oswalt.
That's perfect.
Which is perfect in this show. I've seen clips from it and the trailer. I'm excited to watch it.
Patton Oswalt looks like your M.O.D.O.K tiki mug, right? It's perfect. I think so. In an adorable way.
I would love to see M.O.D.O.K show up in the MCU, but it's going to be hard to take him seriously. Like,
I mean, you got Rocket Raccoon.
Live action motive. But that's true. You're right.
Yeah, in one of the Avengers cartoons that Gabe and I used to watch, Thor kept calling him something like Giant Baby Head. Who is this giant baby head accosting us?
That was my old nickname.
Was it really?
No.
Yeah, so we should watch M.O.D.O.K and we'll have a little chat about it next week maybe. Anyway, so that's all the news I have for you.
Okay.
And Matt, what's our marquee photo today? That
Yeah, we don't have
Wait.
much in the way. The only photo I have this week is from Francis Ng, who sent us a picture. I'm sorry, Henri Ng, who writes to us and says, "Hi, Breakfast All Day. Some good news in Phoenix. Besides that embarrassing Cyber Ninjas recount, the film bar has opened." That was the photo that we showed at the top of the show. The film bar where you can drink and watch movies, and they are reopened. So if you live in the Phoenix area, hit them up.
Matt's two favorite things.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Thank you guys for everything.
All right. Well, listen, thanks everybody for watching. You know what? If your local theaters have some fun, we're open again marquees. Keep sending them our way. We do love those. And yeah, the three of us will be together sooner, if not later.
Right. Or I will also add, send us pictures if you go to the movies. Send us pictures from you at the movies, and we'll run the show.
Absolutely. We'd love that. So thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our social media at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and our Patreon pages. Hopping. We are recapping The Handmaid's Tale. We are recapping Barry Jenkins' Underground Railroad that's currently now dropped on Amazon Prime. Next week, we'll be doing our monthly Off the Menu, where our subscribers get to choose a film that we've never talked about on the show before to go back and review. It's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and so we are going back to Chloe Zhao's first film before her Oscar for Nomadland. Before The Rider, she did a movie called Songs My Brother Taught Me, so we'll be talking about that next week. If you want to watch it in the meantime and get caught up, so you'll know what we're talking about when we discuss it, do that. But by all means, join our Patreon at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. Have a good week. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time. Bye.